Welcome to the Center for International and Regional Studies at Georgetown University in Qatar. This podcast series is part of the Energy Humanities Research Initiative. The project aims to generate new scholarly conversations on everyday lived experiences of energy.
Welcome to part 2 of Everyday Energy's conversation with Victor Ehikhamenor. I'm Trish Kahle, a historian at Georgetown University in Qatar. Today, in this episode, we are extending our conversation from part 1, where we discussed his work, The Wealth of Nations. Part 2 puts this work into a larger global context, particularly thinking about the politics of violence embedded in representing oil.
I think here now I'm about to sort of expose my own predilections. So initially, one of the first things I had encountered a review of the installation and sort of the broader exhibition. And I was immediately drawn to the title, The Wealth of Nations, because I had just taught it in a class.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so, but and one of the things that I, loved about the installation was that the more I looked at it, the more that title actually felt unsettled for me. Because at first I had come, okay, I just taught this text. I know what this is supposed to signify. And the longer I sat with it, the more unsure I felt, which was it doesn't sound satisfying when I say it like that, but it was really satisfying. And one of the things that had really provoked me to think about was particularly, we're very, I think, primed to think about how oil wealth moves around the world and sort of how resources and wealth are extracted from oil-rich nations, and multinationals in particular profit from it. But I also think that there was also an element about complicity and state violence, right? And sort of how the violence, that both ecological, state violence against people, has traveled out from the Niger Delta to the rest of the world. Yes. And so I was wondering if you wanted to say more about that, about violence in your work and sort of how the toll of violence moves with the oil or gets left behind.
In that particular work, you cannot suppress the violence that comes with extraction of natural resources, especially in my continent, right? We can write a tome on that. You understand what I'm saying? And the most devastating aspect of it is that sometimes it's not instigated by the people, it's the ones that are coming to extract it. Because I've always asked these questions: what African country, probably South Africa, which other African country make guns? Which other African country make mines? You understand what I'm saying? So we don't make these things, right? We don't have arm manufacturing that I'm aware of. You understand what I'm saying? So how do we get these things, right? So there's a lot of that can be said, even outside my work, right? Because you can't sit down and say, okay, I want to make this violent work or something like that. But I think the violence of it in that sense is the water that just got polluted, because that shocked me. Yes, of course, it was my idea, but I didn't know it was just going to take only 48 hours. I wanted to find out how long will it take before this entire thing is wiped out. What I've constructed, what is so beautiful in the beginning, has completely become something that is ugly, which is what oil was. Oil was supposed to be beautiful. Some countries have been able to use it wisely to develop their country, whereas others, it has been a cause, right? It's the cause of the black gold. There's a lot of violence. We can say that on state level, on environmental level, on the psyche of the people that the oil is even being extracted from. You understand what I'm saying? Because there is power tussle, there is power play. We're just getting a breather from the Niger Delta, because in the 2000s, late 2000s, mid 2000s to late 2000s, it was crazy. The militancy, people rising up to say, okay, we don't want anybody coming to our land anymore. You guys have done enough. So there was that armed struggle, right? There was a lot of violence. There were different militants coming up in the Niger Delta area, So that was when I moved back to Nigeria, actually. And when one of the presidents that eventually came to power under democratic institution came to power, President Goodluck Jonathan, a truce was being called, So I worked for a newspaper then. I was creative director of a major newspaper in Nigeria then. And the amount of images that was coming from Niger Delta was just mind-blowing for me, of guns that are being surrendered, gunboats that are being surrendered, the militants that are coming to the capital to say, okay, we have downed our guns, we are now ready for peace. You could see the amount of violence, amount of people that died, you understand? And even the state bombing of a lot of these places, because I mean, during one of the administration, I think it's Obasanjo's administration in Nigeria, there was the bombing of an entire town that was completely annihilated, right? So I also had the chance of visiting a place called Oporoza, which is the Baramatu Kingdom. And a section of it, you can still see where there was area bombing of the whole place. Artworks, public sculptures were destroyed. And when I was photographing the area, when I was looking at what I was doing in the area, I realized that when you're dropping bombs in the air, right, on this place, they are surrounded by water, right? So where do they run to? People literally jump into the water. How long can you stay in the water for the bombing to be over? What about those that can't swim? So we can talk about the violence in these situations from Nigeria to the Congos to anywhere you can find natural resources. For some weird reason, attracts some crazy amount of violence. Look at South Africa. I mean, what led to apartheid? What led to the wars that were fought even among the earlier colonizers? You understand? It was about the gold. It was about the mines. It was about natural resources. So we can't shy away from the violence that comes with natural resources at all. You understand? Congo is still not settled right now. You understand? DRC, you look at it and all of those things, because that is the main place where some of the things that we use for our cell phones come from and stuff, you know. So it's something that sometimes when I put my mind around, it's really sad. It's really painful. And I don't think there is enough artwork to kind of elucidate the way I feel about those kind of violence.
Yeah, I mean, it's really evocative for me, as well as the indigenous peoples of the Western United States, right, who live in the oil fields there and have been resisting pipelines and new drilling on their lands. But, you know, same thing about violence against the indigenous people, as well as the pollution of the water.
Exactly.
And so, I mean, in that sense, right, like there's obviously a distinctive Nigerian experience with oil, but it also has a lot of international connections and things that the international community could learn from that experience. And when I say international community, I think that's sort of maybe some people listening will hear that and think like UN, but I'm thinking ordinary people, right? Mm-hmm. And so I was going to ask particularly about, you know, with the wealth of, you know, not just your work, but just a wealth of Nigerian art, literature about oil. What do you think that artists, writers, scholars around the world, what should they learn from that experience of sort of having to interpret, represent this violence, the decimation of communities, that wealth? What could other people learn from that experience?
I think one of the primary objective of one of the primary assignment for an artist, a poet, a writer, and all of that is to mirror society, to talk about societies, to write about societies, to paint about society, and kind of interpret certain things that are normal or paranormal to the regular people, for them to understand, you know. So a lot of things have been written about my country, a lot of works have been made about my country and all of that. But I think that there is a lot to be taken away by whoever encounters those things, whether in the written form or in the in the actual form of visual representation, you know. So I mean, well, for the artists, they can also probably find a voice or a way to look at their own, you know, extraction of natural resources, or if there is violence in their society, how they can also like kind of elucidate that clearly for other people. I think since oil was discovered in my country, a lot of literature has been written around it. You know, other artists have spoken about it. It became a part of our tradition. Unfortunately, for the artists or the writers, it's not a beautiful tradition that one can say, oh yeah, this is one particular thing we can look into and say, this is why it is. I mean, look at even the Nigerian Civil War. If you look at it deeply enough, you realize that it was a war of resources, not necessarily a tribal war, So, and when you look at the writing around the Nigerian Civil War, the Biafran War, you realize that there's a lot to be learned from that. I think one of the big things is for people to learn is to see what they can avoid. How can we bring certain conversations to the table? How can you avoid some of the demise my country has have to endure due to the discovery of oil or due to the extraction of natural resources? As we are speaking right now, there is even more going on in places like Zamfara, which they have gold and other natural resources, because people focus on oil in Nigeria. We have all form of natural resources, but it's just that we've developed the oil industry more than the other resources, So how do you begin to spread this out that other people can benefit from it and have control over it? How can the indigenous people have control over the resources that is being dug out from under their behind? You understand what I'm saying, So I think that is where I would say lessons can be learned. Like, how do we avoid that mental and physical violence that come with natural resources?
And so I guess just sort of as by way of a final question is that how, like you had said, this is 7 years ago now.
Yeah.
And so how did the experience of putting together this installation, how has that informed your work since then, or anything you might be working on now?
Oh, I haven't actually revisited the whole thing because, I mean, it's very easy for one to be pigeonholed into like, oh, he's an environmental artist, or he's a cultural artist, or he's a political artist. I've not had the opportunity to revisit it. I think it's about time actually for even a reinstallation of that piece at even in a larger perspective, but I've not had that opportunity or an institution to look at it from that perspective. So I will welcome that to revisit it again and see what has happened since 2015, because I have not been in that mind space to look at it. In the past 5 years, I would say that I've been looking at a different kind of violence. I've been looking at a different kind of cultural annihilation that had happened in my own kingdom, which is the Benin Kingdom, which is when the British attacked it in 1897 and took all our bronzes and all our art and artifacts, So I have actually kind of been creating an awareness in regards to that particular kind of violence, you understand, of a certain people coming, killing women and children and destroying the palaces, destroying the people's culture and all of that, all in the name of taking taking their creation and again their wealth of nations, because that was our wealth, So you can see that I kind of skipped and went back to a classical history. So my work kind of danced between that past, present, and how does it relate to the future, So in that sense, I would say that 2015 probably started informing me, looking at history and looking at the past and seeing how it's affecting our current living. So after that, I think in 2016, I decided to even go back a little bit more to look at slave trade, and in my installation in Dakar, which is called the prayer room, So which was very close to, if you stand where I created that work, you can see the Gori Island, where it was a point of no return for the slaves, So the whole ideation or the whole origin of me creating a prayer room there is that if you were a slave and you were hiding in that particular place where I had that installation, you will be praying not to be caught or to be transported to a land that you don't know. And how do you avoid that kind of violence? You understand, So over the time, now that we're speaking, I realize that has been consecutive looking at history, you understand, So up until 2017, when I went to Venice Biennale as one of the artists that represented Nigeria, to also look at how have we forgotten those that came before us? You understand? How has history marginalized those that came before us? That violence of being forgotten or being canceled out of history. We look at violence from different perspectives, because we often tend to mistake the fact that violence is only about physical violence, but there's mental violence, there's psychological violence, there's the violence of being wiped out of history. You understand? So that something else can be sit on top of what was there. So you can say that over time, since that installation, I've referenced history, I've referenced things that needs to be readdressed and revisited.
I mean, I think that both in terms of sort of thinking about histories of slavery as well as histories of oil and extraction, right? That question of redress is really, I think, one of the central ones, and hopefully something that in particular, people listening to this either from the United States or from Europe sort of are able to take from your work.
Thank you.
I guess then, do you have any sort of last thoughts you want to leave us with, or anything else you want to add before we wrap up for the interview?
I think we probably covered everything, except you have a last question as well. But I think I really don't have anything else to add to it other than to say really thank you for inviting me, to have this conversation. Oftentimes I'm being taken out of my comfort zone, and certain topics come up that I have to think hard about and see how they relate to my work, So yeah,
No, I mean, it's been a pleasure to get to talk to you. And I really appreciated getting to sort of sit with your work more substantively, even though it's not my primary area of expertise.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.